you're not sure or can't say whether or not the president prior to today knew that there were 8 people in the meeting. One of them was this other Russian who Senator Grassley had made these comments about.
Well, I could tell you. Well, no. Here's what I could tell you. Let me tell you what I'm sure of. The president was not aware of the meeting, did not know who the participants were, did not attend the meeting, and only recently became aware of that meeting when his son said that. So what transpired in the last 24 hours, I don't know. But I mean, and who would?
So let me ask.
The fact is, yeah.
Let me ask you about that because you've been very clear that the president you've been very clear that the president wasn't aware of the meeting. Was the president at any point, or the candidate at that point? See, when I read those emails from Donald Trump Jr. and the exchange, to me, one of the things that stands out is he's being told, apparently for the first time, but it doesn't sound like he's all that surprised by it, that the Russian government is backing his father. Now, I know nothing. You say nothing came out of the meeting. Donald Trump Jr. says that, so does the Russian attorney. But in that email, that's pretty big information that the Russian government is backing your father. Can you say with 100% certainty that the candidate, Donald Trump, either prior to the meeting taking place, after this email was received, or after the meeting took place, was never informed by Donald Trump Jr. or Paul Manafort or Kushner or somebody in that room that, oh, you know what? The Russian government may be backing your campaign? Because that seems like a pretty big headline for a son to not tell his father.
Donald Trump Jr. stated publicly that he did not notify his father of the meeting and had not discussed the meeting with his father
but that's
until
only,
the
we only know
emails
that
were
from
released.
Donald Trump Jr.
I'm going based on what, look, I mean, you're asking, I understand the question you're asking, but let me give you the answer. Because I got to be really clear here, Anderson. The president was not aware of and did not participate of it, and only became aware of the meeting as when we all did. So I think the meeting was not an issue until what? Emails were released. And the emails were released by Donald Trump Jr. He stated he did not discuss it with his father, and I take him at his word for that because no one else has said that his father was aware of it, the President of the United States.
But not being aware of the meeting is different than not being told that the Russian government is backing your campaign or that
he said he never had a discussion. The president said he has never had a discussion with his son about that. His son the son did not discuss the issue. Donald Trump Jr. didn't discuss it with the president when he was a nominee.
Just that a couple,
for president,
in March, his son said he'd never met any Russian as a representative of the campaign, and we now know that's not true. And based on what he said on Saturday, the credibility of his son is in question for some people.
Okay, but here, look, I don't think that's fair. They had hundreds of meetings going on a weekly basis, okay? So let's be realistic there. Hundreds of meetings going on. This was one meeting that had no results of any kind. Zero.
Well, we don't know that for a fact. We just know that based on Donald Trump
everybody
and this
that
Russian lawyer.
the people that you've put on the air have said that nothing has developed from this.
We haven't put Donald Trump Jr. or the Russian lawyer. We did play an interview that the Russian attorney gave, but of course, if she is linked to the Kremlin, she's going to deny it.
Jim Acosta just said they spoke to the Russian American.
Right, the other guy.
And he said nothing happened. And let me go back to the legal issue, though, for just a moment, because that's what I'm the lawyer. Here's the legal issue. What law was violated by that meeting? And your experts have said it too. Nothing. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about.